History happened everywhere.
The verdict.
This is our after-show podcast where we look back at the most recent episode, number 78, Plumbing in the Himalayas during the 1950s. So if you haven't listened to that, go back and check it out, or else there will be spoilers ahead.
The world's most shocking monster. No one's ever lived who's seen him. Be on your guard. He's coming to this theater. The abominable snowman dares you. We dare you. Dare you to see the abominable snowman of the Himalayas.
Hello, my name is Ryan Weir, and I am here in the HHE studio with the mountain to my molehill. It's Mr. Peter Goddard.
Oh, I like that one. That's a good one. I feel mountainous today because I've put on a lot of weight, so I'm massive.
I was thinking more ragged-faced.
Also that, thank you.
But we are joined as ever by the Dalai Daddy-O of dungarees. It's the judge himself. It's Mr. Paul Dersley.
I take offence at that.
The Dalai, the Daddy-O, or the dungarees?
The dungarees, of course.
I'd love to see you in dungarees.
Well, you won't.
Now, Peter, I suffered severe respiratory distress at the summit of Everest this week after someone switched out my oxygen for helium, and as such, I have completely forgotten everything you said during the episode. So, would you mind reminding me what happened in, let's say, 60 seconds?
Yes, Ryan, I can remind you. But when would you like me to do it?
I would like you to do it now.
We travelled to the mighty mountains of the Himalayas to discover plumbing. We peered into the deepest toilet in the world in Tibet and discovered what to do with the bucket of ash. We also met Griffith Pugh, the unsung hero of the successful expedition to climb the world's highest mountain, Everest, and discovered the importance of good plumbing to provide you with your oxygen. We also met Lobsang Rampa, the Lama who wrote a bestseller about his early life in Tibet, with the tiny caveat that he was actually a plumber who'd never even left the UK. We went high, we went low, and we definitely discovered plumbing in the Himalayas in the 1950s.
Last week's episode done, summarised nicely, nice one son. Now we're over to a young Dersley, who's gonna tell you what he thought of thee. He'll take you apart without any care. He's the lovely Paul Dersley, the lovely Paul Dersley. Ah, yes. I remember now, and what an episode it was, Pete. I think you navigated some tricky terrain and came out on top. You gave me at least 10 zings to think about.
Can you deal with 10 things at once?
10 zings.
Oh, I see. Okay.
And best of all, through sheer persuasion, you convinced me that the Himalayas are something to see.
Oh, that actually was not your worst work.
Thanks. But what does it matter what I think? My opinion, Pete, is not worthy of a bucket of ash. We are, of course, here for the opinion of just one man, Judge Dersley. So, Paul, before you reveal your final grade, let's start with your first impressions of episode 78.
First of all, your puns have been noted for future reference.
Come on, 10 zings to think about. That's pretty clever.
I like that one.
My first impressions were Pete isn't very good at his pronunciation.
Oh,
I think that is a well-established fact. I'm in no way going to challenge that.
Well, I thought the mountain range was called the Himalaya.
I feel like we covered that off.
But the one that you didn't cover, the name of the mountain.
Everest?
Yes. Sir George Everest would not have been very happy.
Oh, damn. I did not know that.
It was actually his name was George it was pronounced Everest.
Mount Everest.
I did not know that. Well, you've added to the show there, Paul, so I hope that's reflected in the grade.
That's slightly backwards, isn't it? You were wrong, so I give... Oh, okay.
I quite liked Everest. He came out of that story looking quite good. When I first went down that road and found that it was named after another British guy, I was like, oh, here we go. But then actually him saying, no, you shouldn't call it that, I thought was quite impressive.
Yes, it was sort of not what you expect, but it was probably because, you can't get the th sound out in Hindi, so Everest he would have been very happy because they'd get it wrong all the time.
Yeah, it was just nice to tell a story that wasn't British people running around and being completely self-centered.
We're not all self-centered, you know.
Well, quite so. And that was nice. It was nice to be able to tell.
Are there many other mountains that are named after people?
Mount McKinley was one that's not called Mount McKinley anymore, is it? It's Denali.
I believe Mont Blanc was named after a brand of pen.
Right, Peter, I would like to talk about your choice of the national animal for the Himalayas.
I chose the Yeti, and I chose it specifically because I thought you might enjoy it, Ryan.
I very much did enjoy talking about it.
I didn't.
Well, good news, Paul, because guess what I've got some facts about. So let's talk Yeti.
No tea.
So the first reported sighting of the Yeti was in 1889, and it was by a British mountaineer called Lieutenant Colonel H.P.S. Moore.
No, I'm not allowing that.
What do you mean not allowing
Keep going,
it?
Ryan. You're making me look good.
That's a fact.
No, it's not.
It is a fact, and a journalist heard about his story.
No, get his rank correct.
Oh, Lieutenant Colonel H.
Thank you.
Lieutenant Colonel H.P.S. Moore, and he was up climbing, he saw the Yeti, and he came back down and told a bunch of people, and a journalist heard about this, and he published an article about it in which it was the first time that the Yeti had been referred to as the Abominable Snowman. After that, there have been plenty of eyewitness accounts, but no smoking gun evidence, I'll give you that. Right? Some lamas in the Himalayas, they believe that the Yeti lives in a different plane of existence and is like a spirit-like creature. It can pop in and out of our dimension, which they say is why it's so hard to find. But there is one monastery in Nepal which claims to have a Yeti hand. And in 1959, adventurer Peter Byrne, he visited the temple to see the hand. And while looking at it, he removed one of the fingers.
They're never going to notice.
And he replaced it, though, because he's quite canny, with a human finger that he had taken there on purpose. He just sort of swapped it out.
It just happened to have a human finger on it.
Well, he had 8 on him, surely.
Yeah. Now, what do you think you do with that finger that you've stolen, if you're him?
Sell it.
Take it on the road.
You give it to a Hollywood superstar because the actor Jimmy Stewart had been in India out hunting and he came to see this finger and he was like, look, I'll take this to London because I'm flying there next. So he gave the finger to his wife, Gloria, who hid it in her lingerie because she didn't want like the customs officers to see it. And so they got the finger back to England. They took it to the Royal College of Surgeons in London. They tested it and found it was a human finger. So so that's not a Yeti's either. There is a theory that the Yeti is actually a bear because in 2011, scientists discovered an unknown species of bear living in the Himalayas. The first new species of bear to be discovered in over 150 years. Closely related to the polar bear, it weighs up to 400 pounds. It has thick reddish-brown fur, and it's found living in the high altitudes of the Himalayas. So it could well be that a lot of these myths are based around this bear, which up until very recently we didn't even know about. But not everyone thinks that the Yeti is a bear, because as I mentioned in the episode, Sir David Attenborough, the naturist, as we said, he has been recorded as saying that he believes the Yeti could be a long-lost primate. So in an interview in 2013, he said,
that there is a real possibility that there might be something in the Abominable Snowman mystery.
In the where, sorry?
The Abominable Snowman mystery.
All right, yeah.
In the 30s, there was a German called von Königswald, and he went into a Chinese chemist, apothecary's shop, and among them were some fossil teeth, about 4 or 5 times the size of our molars. It had to be the molar of a giant ape. That's would stand, if it was blown up in proportion, something like 10 feet to 12 feet tall. Immense.
Yeah.
And I just have a suspicion there certainly was one, a giant ape there, and I think it's not impossible that one will survive.
So there you go. I mean, if you're looking for anyone that is going to give you some confidence that a Yeti exists, Sir David Attenborough surely is the man.
As a counterpoint to that, Ryan, the Edmund Hillary, who was the first man to reach the top of Everest, along with Tenzin Norgay, in 1960-61, he had another expedition to the Himalayas, which was specifically, in part, to hunt for Yeti. Funnily enough, we went with Griffith Pugh again, Griffith Pugh being the scientist medic who was a key to the success of the Everest expedition. In reality, he was using the Yeti hunt as a means to raise finances for a journey that was actually about some scientific investigations they wanted to do. So this expedition was kind of cross-financed by this kind of crazy chase for the Yeti, also in the Himalayas. The big footprints that they found, they discovered, actually, if you trace them to a shaded area, it was normal-sized footprints that have melted out to be bigger because of the heat of the sun. So he came away having found absolutely nothing, I'm afraid.
Well, look, I'm telling you, there are still people out there that do believe in the Yeti. And if you do decide to go, there is a Yeti-themed resort, which has been built as sort of part hotel, part museum. And apparently it caters to all those who want to go out and capture a Yeti.
That is an incredibly niche location.
There's lots of people who want to find a Yeti.
I guess. I kind of want to go there now, actually. So I guess it's done its job.
There you go. What do you think, Paul? Are you convinced?
No. Now I need to pick you up on something.
Oh, probably just to pick me up to say, well done. That was correct.
He often does that.
Famous for it.
No, I just wish to pick you up on the top of Mount Everest is not the highest point on Earth.
Oh, interesting. Did Pete get it wrong?
Oh, he's getting his sting ready.
You will actually find that Mount Chimborazo in Ecuador is higher from the center of the Earth.
Is that to do with the equator and the shape of the Earth?
Correct.
I get a point!
I don't think this is a quiz.
No, but it's the Earth, because of the spinning of the Earth, it sort of effectively it bulges at the equator, and that equator actually means the top of this Mount Chimborazo is about a mile further up than Everest is.
Well, I did actually explain all that in the episode, but Ryan cut it out. So we left it implied that...
Don't you blame my editing.
No, I did not make that point. But I think I was referring to sea level. I didn't say it, but that was definitely what I meant.
Didn't say it, did you?
Oh.
I didn't feel it needed saying because we always refer to above sea level.
But yeah, if you didn't say that, then obviously Mauna Kea becomes the tallest mountain in the world.
Does it?
Paul, can I just push the button? I'm so itchy for it right now.
Oh, well, yes, press the button.
Peter got it wrong. Peter got it wrong. Peter got it wrong. Peter got it wrong. But look, talking of high things, Pete, I believe that you want to talk about geese.
I do want to talk about geese. That is an excellent segue because, as you know, I had a bit about geese that we didn't have time for in the main episode.
That's right.
And so I've done the research. So gosh darn it, I'm bringing it to the verdict, whether you like it or not. Now, the bar-headed goose is a goose that crosses the Himalayas on their migration. This is one of the highest altitude migrations in the world. And it's partly thanks to their plumbing. So there was a woman called Lucy Hawkes, who was a postdoctoral researcher at Bangor University. She had a team of 13 scientists and they tracked a bunch of geese, basically. They captured 25 geese in India, satellite tagged them and then let them do their northbound migration. Then they captured another 38 geese in Mongolia for the southbound trip. And they found that basically the geese could pass over the Himalayas in one day.
Wow.
Climbing between 4,000 and 6,000 meters in 7 to 8 hours. So all of that effort of the human being dragging himself up and these guys just flap across in 24 hours.
Do they carry their own oxygen?
They do not. So they have denser capillaries than other animals.
What does the capillaries do?
That takes blood to your muscles.
So there'd be more capillaries in the lungs to convert the oxygen into hemoglobin, and then there'd be more capillaries at the other end to turn that into energy.
Nice.
And another interesting part of their plumbing is it turns out that they've got these air sacs that allow the flow of oxygen in the lung, or flow of air through the lungs. You and I breathe in and we breathe out, and that means we're always kind of mixing the air we breathed in with the air we breathe out. But the bar-headed goose and many other birds have lungs that have basically a one-way system. So the oxygen in the air is always passing over a new surface. So instead of breathing in, it all mixes up, and breathing out, it kind of flows in a one-way circuit. So you're always getting fresh air over the surface of the lung. All of these things add up, and it turns out they can extract at least twice as much oxygen per unit of time from the air than we do. But I just think it's amazing that anything can get over the Himalayas in a day. That's just astonishing. And it's thanks to all these there's a bunch of different adjustments that the geese have managed to make. And their plumbing is really well designed to enable them to get the most of the rare oxygen that they have available.
Nice.
I was surprised by how much I had that I wasn't even able to use. I thought I was going to be absolutely stuck for stuff, but it turned out to be a very fertile topic.
We've got to talk about this plumber.
That was wild, wasn't it? I could not believe it when I found that.
He was son of a plumber.
He was son of a plumber. I had a real soft spot for him, that he was totally uncovered and exposed, and it made no difference to him at all. He carried on. He wrote his books. He just kept going, except for obviously the book that his cat wrote for him. I loved the guy by the end of it.
So do we think that he was unwell mentally, or do we think he was just eccentric or on drugs or something? Like, what was the inspiration for all this? Just bored?
I genuinely don't know, because
he spent his life doing it.
He doesn't come across as someone with a huge amount of malice in the tale, does he?
Yeah, so just with Heinrich Harrison, I'm not having this. I'm getting a private detective to look into it.
Yeah, I hadn't even realised that this one guy was the guy who wrote 7 Years in Tibet as well. So it turned into quite the story. I started great.
It's well worth a read, actually, rather than the film. It's worth a good read, that.
Well, talking about movies, I'm going to talk about movies after this. Okay, so look, I wanted to talk about the cultural influence of the Yeti.
We've already done this.
Particularly, though, at the movies. In the 1950s, Universal Pictures were becoming known for their series of monster movies. You know, those horror films that featured vampires and Frankenstein, the Wolfman,
Creature from the Black Lagoon.
Creature from the Black Lagoon, exactly. And so, eager to keep adding to their creature feature roster, in 1957, they made a movie about the Abominable Snowman, and they called it The Abominable Snowman.
Where do they get their ideas?
And it stars horror legend Peter Cushing. And the movie follows a group of explorers as they search for a Yeti in the Himalayas. But the Yeti caught people's imagination, and more movies then followed featuring the Abominable Snowman. In fact, there have been nearly 100 Yeti movies released since the 1950s. Movies like Half Human, the story of the Abominable Snowman, Yeti, the Abominable Snowman, then in 1977, Yeti, then in 2008, Yeti, then in 2012, Yetis.
Again, where do they get their ideas?
In 2014, Yeti. In 2020, Yeti. In 2022, The Yeti.
Oh, interesting.
Then there's The Last Yeti, Day of the Yeti, Rage of the Yeti, Quest for the Yeti, Werewolf and the Yeti, Bigfoots and Yetis, Bigfoot versus Yeti, Yeti versus Bigfoot.
Bigfoot are those two related, or are they just two totally different
two different
titles?
Films. Bigfoot is real. Sasquatch versus the Abominable Snowman. Yeti versus Chupacabra. Yeti Massacre. Yeti Assassin. To Catch a Yeti. Attack of the Yeti Hand. Yeti or Not, which is my favourite.
Yes.
Yeti or Not.
Junga
the Dancing Yeti. A Yeti in the City. A Yeti
A Yeti in the City, I would watch, in fairness.
A Yeti Still Christmas. A Yeti Met a Mammoth. Girl, Yeti, and a Spaceship.
Oh, I thought it was going to be Girl Meets Yeti.
No, that's Yeti After Dark. Followed by Yeti, A Love Story, and the sequel, Another Yeti, A Love Story 2, life on the streets. So those were some of the Yeti movies and Abominable Snowman movies that I could
There
find.
was a period there where they'd really run out of ideas, and there was like 5-6 consecutive movies called Yeti.
Well, they obviously didn't do their research, did they?
Anyway, there you go. There's a whole bunch of movies recommendation for you.
Yes, so there was one other thing that we actually recorded, but we had to cut out. So I was talking about actual plumbing in the Himalaya area, and I was talking about the structure known as a Naula. If you imagine a ziggurat, like a pyramid with the stepped sides, and sort of push it into the earth to make steps down, they dig these holes down and they line them with stones, and essentially they do this over a water source, so the water bubbles up through the stone, I think, so it filters it. Anyway, this is a community water source that's made and managed by the community, and it's kind of considered a sort of sacred act, or an act of great spirituality to provide water. So not only is this little pool provided with water for washing and drinking, I guess, it's also kind of a temple as well. So on top of the pool you have a structure, so it's usually closed on 3 sides, there's a doorway on one side, but you'll also find inside statuary, so statues of a local deity or possibly Vishnu.
How big is this thing? I'm trying to picture it in my mind. I'm imagining massive.
No, the ones I've seen were kind of like a big garden shed.
Some of them can be absolutely enormous. It's a Hindu thing, isn't it?
Yeah, it's definitely this was in one of the Indian regions of the Himalayas. So yeah, these ones were, I guess, Hindu, or Vishnu, obviously.
I think they're called
Hindu.
cisterns, or the word cistern is applied to them.
It was just, for me, it was really interesting that the water and the sacred became so intertwined. And so, yeah, you not only bathe and get your water from this Naula, but it's also a sacred place. Brides will visit the Naula for a blessing. People leave offerings at the Naula as well. So for me, there's just an interesting confluence between the preciousness of water and the kind of spiritual dimension coming together, and this bathhouse / temple exists. There's one called the Badrinathji Kar Naula, which is believed to date back to the 7th century, and it's still in use today.
Wow, 7th century. It's not the same water, though, surely.
I think they've swapped the water out a couple of times.
They're all bathing in that since the 7th century.
Yeah, it's got a bit nasty now.
It's just soup.
Well, they actually bathe in the thing that they take water from.
My assumption is they take water from it with which to bathe, rather than people actually swimming around in it.
You should have done your research.
It's a surprisingly limited amount of information about the Naula. I thought it would be very easy to find information, but it was surprisingly a few resources that I found. So if anyone knows about Naulas out there, please feel free to write in, because I found them very interesting.
Yeah, let us know. hhepodcast.com. You comfy?
Sorry, I dropped my pencil, so I had to bend over and pick it up.
And so we have come to the end of the line. It's time to step into the dock and prepare to face the people's judge. Now, Judge Dersley, are you ready to give your verdict?
Yes, I am.
Then will the defendant please rise?
Absolutely.
Your Honour, as usual, may we start proceedings by first asking for your verdict on factual content.
Well, the factual content was correct within the boundaries that Pete imposed upon it, but those boundaries might not necessarily be the correct boundaries. So, I shall give you B-.
Oh, Peter.
I'd like a B-. I can pin that to my chest.
Okay, Your Honour, may we then ask for your verdict on entertainment value?
Well, I don't know what you did this one, but some of the sketches were actually funny.
Yeah, we thought we'd try something new. Make the sketches funny this time.
Your Himalayas, or whatever you call it, the gender-neutral mountains, I like that. And anything scatological is always a hit with me.
Well, then may we have your grade for entertainment value?
The grade for entertainment value, I would give B+.
Nice!
Wow. Then may I have your verdict on Dersley factor?
Well, I'm always fascinated by the Himalayas and sort of mountaineering stories around there.
Damn it.
But I suppose Pete is lucky. He always gets the subjects that I'm sort of interested in. So we can call it a zyzzygy.
Are you drunk?
A zyzzygy is when lots of things get in line. ZYZYGY, I think. Zyzzygy.
I learn things on this podcast.
And also the plumber story was a gem. Peter, for me factor, I'll give you A-.
Oh, come on! I mean, great. That's amazing. It is amazing, and you deserve it.
That's very big of you, Ryan.
And so we reach the final verdict, but before the judge passes his ruling, Peter, you have an opportunity now to enter a short plea. If you choose to do so, please make that plea now.
This is like you handing me a fragile, precious, ancient heirloom and saying, would you like to juggle with it? No, this is a very precarious state of affairs, and I have nothing more to add.
Okay, well then in that case, Your Honour, the defendant stands before you. Have you reached a verdict?
Yes.
In which case, I would ask most respectfully for your ruling.
Okay, sorry, Pete. I'm going to dock you a point from the last one and give you B+.
Nice! That's absolutely fine by me, Judge. Peter got a B+. Peter got a B+. Ryan.
Hooray. It's great. It's good. It's good. It's good because the next episode's going to be about zombies, so I'm bound to get a high grade.
Oh dear.
All right, there you go. Okay, well look, there you go. That is our show for this week. If you'd like to get in touch about any of the things that we've talked about on the show, or just to say hello, you can reach out to us on social media through our website at hhepodcast.com or by email at peteandryan@hhepodcast.com.
That's right. We'd love to hear from you, and you never know, you might end up featured on a future show.
That's right. And one way to definitely feature on a future episode is to rate and review the show on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Your recommendation there really goes a long way to helping bring the show to new listeners.
As ever, if you're on Mastodon, Facebook, Instagram, X, previously Twitter, you can find us at HHE Podcast. If you subscribe to those, you'll get an alert whenever we post trivia, pictures, probably Yeti facts, knowing Ryan, news, photos, all sorts of things. We try and put something out most days.
That's right, and we are going to be back again soon with our next spooky Halloween special episode, The Living Dead in Paris during the 19th century.
Woo!
But in the meantime, a huge thank you to the judge himself. Thank you, Paul.
I'll do the noise that Yeti in Star Wars makes. Goodbye.
I don't remember that in Star Wars.
It's like Chewbacca's in the room.
That's the name. I couldn't remember it.
And that's it. I guess all that's left to say is...
You've been listening to...
So I would like to talk about perhaps the most famous and well-known Yeti.
Jesus Christ.
You've really doubled down on this Yeti business, haven't you?
You're very lucky I'm not scoring you.
So, in 1956, during the construction of Disneyland in California, all the dirt that they dug up to form the moat around Sleeping Beauty's castle was put into a big giant pile. Now, unfortunately for Disney, the hill became popular, but not with just visitors to the park, but with horny teenagers that went there to treat it as some sort of nighttime lover's lane. Which wasn't really the Disney way of things. So they started having some conversations about what to do with the hill. And while Walt Disney himself was working on a movie in Switzerland, he found a postcard picture of the Matterhorn. So he bought the postcard and he sent it to Vic Green, who was his theme park architect, with a simple message on it that just said, "Vic, build this, Walt." which is pretty straightforward.
There it is.
And there it is. And so, in 1959, the Disneyland ride Matterhorn bobsleds opened to the public. It's a toboggan ride roller coaster, and it soon became like the most popular ride at the park. But by 1978, the ride had lost a lot of its sort of sheen, right? So Disney bosses started to look at what they could do to give it a bit of an upgrade. And so one of the major changes they made was the introduction of an abominable snowman, a large white-furred primate with dark blue skin, menacing red eyes, and a foul temper. They called the Yeti Harold. And so people enjoyed the ride, and Harold gained notoriety as riders evade his clutches. But as time passed, and guests became sort of familiar with the ride again, Disney decided to revamp it. And so, on May 22nd, 2015, to celebrate the park's 60th anniversary, a redesigned version of the Matterhorn bobsleds ride opened with a renewed focus on Harold. Now, unfortunately, Harold's redesign came in for a bit of criticism. And so, taking on this feedback, Disney then opened another attraction at their Animal Kingdom park called Expedition Everest, within which they introduced another Yeti, different to the Matterhorn Harold, with brown fur and no red eyes. It was much larger, scarier than Harold, and it was described as a vicious, man-eating, bloodthirsty and aggressive monster that lives on Mount Everest, destroying railways and attacking guests. And they called it Betty. And Betty is one of the largest animatronics in all of the Disneyland parks. It was originally designed to lunge 5 foot towards riders while swinging its arms, but they changed that after the mechanism started to wear out, and they were like, let's just keep it stand there still, and we'll put a strobe light by it to sort of simulate movement instead. And that resulted in Betty getting a new nickname, the Disco Yeti.
Betty the Disco Yeti. That is awesome.
Yeah, but despite Betty's popularity, Harold still remains the fan favourite. And when the Matterhorn bobsleds ride reopened after the COVID pandemic, Disneyland's park's TikTok account announced the event with an interview with Harold. And the interview goes like this.
Well, we won't take up too much of your time. We just wanted to know how you feel about the Matterhorn bobsleds reopening. Couldn't have said it better myself.
And he is said to be central to a future Disney Plus movie, which will be based on the Matterhorn bobsleds ride.
I'm going to guess it's going to be called Yeti.
And apparently it's going to feature a lovesick Harold looking for a Yeti mate. Hopefully,
Aww.
Betty the Disco Yeti.
Yeah, I mean, it's a match made in heaven and you've got somewhere to meet.
Now do you believe in Yetis, Paul?
Sorry, have you finished?
I do not think you've won him over one iota there, right?
He's the abominable judge.
Thank you, I take that as a compliment. Come on, laundry, come on.